So without it, you've got all those hi-hats and the snare drum. So let's turn it on. There we go. So now we want it just opening on the snare drums, nothing else. Yeah. Now it's a little bit, isn't it? Rather than a do. So we want to open this release a bit. Oop, a little bit cropped in there, so let's. Perfect. So let's put the kick and snare together. Now that does sound artificial, but when you put everything else in, it doesn't, because all this fills in all those gaps. But now what we can do is we can add a compressor. So I'm going to add a compressor to the snare drum. I'm just going to turn the kick drum off. Now this is the default settings on the compressor. So we've got a ratio and a threshold. Now the ratio and the threshold affect the sound the most. These two are the big ones. I'm going to turn the auto gain off. So as you lower the threshold, the compression happens more. So this is a backwards control. It's tempting to think that you turn it up and it's doing loads, but no, that's doing naught. So we bring the threshold down onto the sound. And this is, the meter here is the amount of compression that's happening. And it's also backwards because we're going negative. So as I pull this down, see, we got more of it. And what it's going to do is it's going to squash the sound by a 2 to 1. So it means that whatever was a certain volume now is now lower. It's very difficult to explain. Lots of drawing of diagrams, lots of listening, lots of using. All of these methods of learning will help you understand compression. But what we're trying to do is even out the volume. So that snare drum is just exactly the same each time. It sort of looks kind of the same. If we zoom in on this waveform, if I do this, look, right, let's get rid of that. And let's zoom in down here. You can see the peaks are pretty much the same, but we can do more than that. Because some of these, go quiet. There's a bit where you got excited. So these are quieter than those, but using compression, we can just make sure that everything is right there all of the time. And it just makes it sound more intense and more rock. And you can make it sound like he's hitting it harder as well. So I'm going to put the ratio to 8. Now we can see there's our input, and this is the output. And that's where it's going, between 5 and 6, 7-ish. Right. But now it's a bit quieter because we've squashed the volume. So we use the makeup, which is just basically a volume control, to just turn it back up. So let's put the kick drum back there. It's a bit quieter. So we're going to do that. Yeah, let's turn the attack down. Oh, it's a bit louder now. Let's put it in with everything. Already it sounds more intense. I like it. I'm going to put an EQ on that snare as well because I want it to sound a bit brighter. So we've got a lot of low frequencies here, some mid frequencies, and this is where the fun's happening. So I'm going to turn that up. In fact, So that's about, let's call that 5 dB added at 3 kilohertz. You can change it to 4 kilohertz. A little bit. I think 3 kilohertz sounds about right. That we want a snappy, rocky snare that cuts through all those noisy guitars. It's getting there, isn't it? Right, kick drum. We're going to do the same. We're going to compress it. In fact, I'm just going to copy those settings over. So now you can really hear that kick drum, the clicky bit of the kick drum, because kick drums have got low bits and high bits, so you can hear the sort of bit of the kick drum, which you can really accentuate with a bit of EQ. So we've got that EQ on the kick drum as well now. Clickety click. That's probably a bit extreme on the kick drum there. I might turn that down. In fact, I might lower it. Yeah, right, guitars. So the guitars are both the same, which means we've got a guitar 1 and a guitar 2 EQ. What I'm actually going to do, rather than have to have 2 EQs, is I'm going to put them, I'm going to turn those off actually. I'm going to put these guitars through a group channel. So I'm going to put those, I'm going to say group 5 actually, and I'm going to call group 5 guitar. So now both of these are controlled by one fader on one channel, so we can put an EQ on here and that's the EQ for both the guitars, so it just makes life easier. So there's this thing about distorted guitars which someone told me once, and it just seems to work, which is basically just always take out about 2k, a little bit of 2k, 2 kilohertz there, and it'll instantly sound a bit better. It's just, that's where the edge is, that sort of raspy. You can add it and it'll sound really, really angry. But I think we got enough. It just sounds a bit more rounded. It's subtle, but it does make a difference. It also means you can turn them up. So I'm going to compress it. Just a little bit. Let's say 3. Let's add a bit of attack so it's crunchy. These have got different characters. Go with that, just black, it seems more rock. Yeah, that's happening.